Good day, participants, and welcome to the session on discipline, orderly rule. I'm your presenter, Kenneth Chin, my Deputy Superintendent of Police and an attorney at law. The aim of this presentation is to expose participants to the practical aspects of the disciplinary procedure when manner breaches are detected. The objectives are, at the end of the lesson, participants should be able to 1. Draft the original diary entry for manner breaches. 2. Draft follow-up entries for manner breaches. 3. Draft a divisional reprimand form. 4. Draft charges for manner breaches. This is the second part in a series of presentations on disciplinary authority and procedures in the Jamaica Constabulary Force. And in this session, the focus is on summary trials, popularly known as orderly rule. In part 1, the theoretical aspects of the lesson were examined, and in this part, we will look at the practical aspects while reinforcing some of the theories. Participants are expected to have with them pens, which red and black or blue, and the necessary prescribed forms, which are the reprimand sheet, the charge sheet, and the diary entry sheet. If you are not yet in possession of those, kindly ask the coordinator on the ground to provide you with copies of at least one copy of each of these forms. Format of the presentation is that the presentation was pre-recorded, and as such, you, the participants, will not be able to ask any questions until the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please write it down and reference the slide number, which is on the bottom right hand corner of each slide, so that I can respond at the end. You'll be working through 3 scenarios during this presentation, which should assist you in improving your knowledge on the topic. There will be timed activities for each scenario, and each activity has 5 minutes. So ensure that you have the necessary forms and your pens ready before the clock starts to count down for those activities. The reference material that we'll be using is the Police Service Regulation 1961, Judicial Decisions, Chapter 13 of the Jamaica Constabulary Force Standing Orders, which deals with discipline, Chapter 8 of the Jamaica Police Manual, Volume 1, which also deals with discipline, and JCF Headquarters Circulars and force orders, which are published from time to time. All the reference material which are mentioned in this presentation are available on the eCampus, the NPCJ eCampus website, and the link to the site is below. It is ecampus.npcj.edu.jm, and you go to special training and the section that deals with disciplinary authority and procedures. The first scenario that we will look at is on the slide. And it says that Constable Devon Thomas, who is an excellent member of your staff in terms of his work and punctuality, on Tuesday, he reported for duty 1 hour late and explained to you that he was out partying the night before and overslept. In this scenario, there are many options that are available to you. You could give Constable Thomas a verbal warning. You could also serve him a divisional reprimand. You could also prefer disciplinary charges against him, and there are many other options which are available to you to deal with this scenario. The question that you have to ask now is, do you have to make a diary entry, or should a diary entry be written? And the simple answer to that question is it depends. If you are an inspector or above, where we have the official diaries that are issued to us, then you could make the necessary notations in that official diary. However, if you are below the rank of inspector and don't have that official diary, then it is the best option is to make the record in the station diary. For the next activity, you are to ensure that you have the diary entry page ready and your pen, as we will be as the activity will be timed. Now, in relation to scenario one, which we have read before, you have decided to give Constable Thomas a caution, or what we call a verbal reprimand. So you have 5 minutes to draft this original diary entry, and the 5 minutes starts now. We have a little under 2 minutes remaining now. Alright, you have a little under a minute now, so you should be tidying up your entry and making those final corrections if you need to. Final 10 seconds. That signal means time is up. Now, before we look at the recommended structure of the entry, we're going to look at some of the common errors when order room is not being contemplated. Number one, not making an entry in the station diary or other official diary or record. Many times we have persons who we claim to be wasters, but then when you check the records, there's nothing to show that this person actually committed a breach or whether or not the person was spoken on any previous occasion. So whenever you have a member committing a breach, it is always a good practice to have a record somewhere so that you can make reference to it. We popularly call this adversary that we build on the person. Number two, some persons make an entry in a book or diary other than the station diary and not having the defaulting member sign the book. So the policy provides that if you have a member who accepts that they have done some act of indiscipline and you decide to give them a warning, then you should have the member acknowledge or accept that breach by signing to the document. Number three, not highlighting in the entry the specific breach that the person actually committed. Four, not outlining that the defaulting member accepted that he was in breach. Five, not outlining that no further action will be taken in the matter. We have an abstract of the diary entry, so I will not go through the top part of the entry nor the part that deal with subject, etc. Just the content of the entry. So sergeant and the name of the sergeant would go there. Is reporting breach of discipline against number the regulation number of the defaulting member is named for being late for duty. Facts are that the name of the constable was detailed to perform, and you put the specific duty at the specific place that he was to perform the duty for the period, in this scenario, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Tuesday, August 11, 2020. He did not report for this duty until 9 a.m. You put the name of the constable again. The constable was spoken to and told that his conduct is contrary to the good order, the discipline, good order, and guidance of the force, and he gave an assurance that he would adjust his off-duty activities to ensure that they do not affect his job and that such incidents will not be repeated. He was given a caution or a verbal reprimand, depends on the wording that you choose. And the last part of the entry is no further action will be taken against this member. And you sign the entry. In the second scenario, it reads, on Monday, you inspected Woman Constable Sasha Pearl, who was for patrol duty on the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift, and observed that she was not equipped with the less lethal equipment which was issued to her. She explained that it was too heavy and uncomfortable for her. You made an original station diary entry, and she later acknowledged that she committed a breach. You decided to serve her a divisional reprimand. You'll be required to complete the divisional reprimand form and to draft the follow-up station diary entry. Ensure that at this stage you have your divisional reprimand form, which is on the screen, and also you have your pen ready. We have already read through the scenario 2. So for this activity, we will be completing the divisional reprimand form. You have 5 minutes for this activity, starting now. You know, I have just under 4 minutes remaining. You know, I have just under 3 minutes remaining. You now have just under 2 minutes remaining. You now have under a minute remaining. Thirty seconds. Of course, that sound means that time is up. Before we look at your attempt at completing the divisional reprimand form, we are going to examine some of the common errors whenever written reprimand is being contemplated. The first thing is that sometimes sub-officers and officers tend to reprimand members who have not accepted that they were in breach. The policy contemplates that before you explore any option other than orderly room or court of inquiry, the member should first accept the charges or accept the breach. Because if they have not accepted that they were in breach and you give them a reprimand, that means that you would have adjudicated on the matter without giving the person a chance to respond. And that would be a breach of natural justice, is that the person must be given an opportunity to defend him or herself. So if you give a reprimand without the person accepting, that would be a breach of natural justice, and that could not form part of any reference in terms of his PMAS or to bar him from anything in the JCF. Number two, not being aware that the written reprimand can be given. Many divisions and station sections are not aware of the policy that govern written reprimands, and as such, we tend not to use it, and we use verbal reprimand, and then you have nothing on file. So when time for the PMAS to be done and other things, you have no evidence. So the written reprimand is an evidence, can form part of your evidence when you are giving the person their PMAS ratings. Number three, making an entry in the station diary or other official diaries or books and not serving the defaulting member with any document. So as a requirement of the policies, the member must be given a copy of the reprimand whenever they are reprimanded. Or not outlining that no further action will be taken in the matter. So there must be some closure to the matter if you give a reprimand. Because if there is an entry somewhere and the officer visits your station and sees an entry with breach of discipline and there is no follow-up entry to close off that particular breach, then you may be tasked to bring the matter before the orderly room. Now we have looked at an extract of the divisional reprimand form, and you can compare what is on the screen to what you actually wrote. And it reads, you were issued with less lethal equipment, which should form part of your equipment whenever you are dispatched on duty. On date, you reported for patrol duty at, and you put the name of the station. When you were inspected at 7:45 a.m., it was observed that you were deficient in your equipment, in that you did not have your less lethal equipment, which is a breach of number 5, part 1 of the second schedule of Police Service Regulation 1961. You subsequently admitted the breach or accepted the breach and asked for leniency, after which this reprimand was prepared. Next, we are going to look at the follow-up entry, and you have to ensure that you have a copy of this document as well as your pen ready. We are still looking at scenario 2, and for the next activity, you will be completing the follow-up station diary entry, for which you have 5 minutes to do. You're looking at the third bullet. It says that you subsequently served her a divisional reprimand, so your entry must reflect the service of the divisional reprimand. You have 5 minutes for this activity, starting now. You know, I have just under 4 minutes remaining. You know, I have just under 3 minutes remaining. You now have just under 2 minutes remaining. You now have under a minute remaining. Thirty seconds. Of course, that sound means that time is up. Before we look at your entry, the diary entry dealing with the service of the divisional reprimand, there are some common errors which we will look at before we compare your entries. First error is not making the follow-up entry any at all. So many times we have a breach committed and you take some action, and instead of making a follow-up entry and close off that particular incident, you leave it hanging. And the officer, when your station is inspected, sees those entries and then instructs you to take the member before orderly room. And it is at that stage that you are trying to dispose of the matter before it reaches orderly room. So you must make the follow-up entry whenever you close off an incident. Number two, not cross-referencing the follow-up entry with the original entry. Three, not recording who served and witnessed the divisional reprimand. Four, not outlining that no further action will be taken in the matter. We will now look at your entry that you made and compare it to this draft that was done. So the entry reads as follows. On Tuesday, August 11, 2020, about 10 a.m., Sergeant K. Billsworth served a divisional reprimand on, and you put the name of the defaulting member. She signed the reprimand, which was witnessed by number, and you put the name of the witness. And you put a note that no further action will be taken in the matter. And you sign that entry and ensure that it is cross-referenced with the original entry. We're looking at scenario 3, which reads, you have spoken to Constable Sheldon Hamilton on several occasions about his refusal to shave and his general poor deportment. On Friday, about 8 a.m., he reported for station guard duty dressed in uniform. However, he was not properly shaved. You decided to take the matter to orderly room, complete the original diary entry, the charge sheet, and the follow-up entry. Before we look at the activity, ensure that you have the copy of the diary entry page, which should have at least one entry written on it already. So ensure that you have a diary entry page for the next activity. So for scenario 3, you will have 5 minutes to complete the original station diary entry. You have 5 minutes for this activity starting now. You now have just under 4 minutes remaining. You now have just under 3 minutes remaining. You now have just under 2 minutes remaining. You now have under a minute remaining. Thirty seconds. Of course, that sound means that time is up. Before we look at your entry, we are going to examine some of the common errors when orderly room is being contemplated. Number one, not informing the member that he is in breach. And of course, this is whenever it is practicable. There are some instances when the member has not reported for duty at all, and you need to make an entry. In those situations, when you have not yet seen the member, then you would make the entry before the member is informed of the breach. Number two, not making an entry in the station diary. Three, including scandalous information or information regarding previous breaches. Now, in this scenario, we see where the member was frequently repeating the same offense. In your entry, you have to be careful that you don't include any previous action in your entry, because this can lead to it being deemed scandalous and as such might be used against you who charged the person if you are taken before orderly room. 4. Not highlighting in the entry the specific breach which was committed. 5. Not outlining that the disciplinary action will be taken whether it is conditionally or unconditionally. So there are some times that you write an entry and you put a rider to it which says that this disciplinary action will be taken if reasonable excuse is not given. So that would be a conditional entry. But there are some entries which are unconditional, which you just state that disciplinary action will be taken against the member. We will now look at your entry that you have made and compare it to the extract, which is on the slide. So the name of the sergeant reporting the breach is reporting a breach of discipline against the name of the defaulting member for being untidy in his person in that he was not properly shaved. Facts are that on day, time and place, the name of the defaulting member who was on the name of the duty, the type of duty, was inspected and it was observed that he was dressed in uniform but not properly shaved. He was warned that disciplinary action will be taken against him, and you sign that entry. There are many divisions and departments which we don't know the proper procedure in laying the charge to the service of the summons. And we are going to go through the steps which should be followed for the service of the summons. Number one, breach detected, and the breach must fall within the second schedule of the Police Service Regulation 1961. 2. Make diary entry and warn the accused or the defaulting member. 3. Draft the charge, copy the entry, and write your statement or report if necessary. The policy as it relates to summary trials or orderly room is that you don't need a statement or a report. The only thing you need is the actual charge sheet. So you can draft the charge and submit the charge sheet with the diary entry, and that would be enough for the first hearing of the matter. However, if the member pleads not guilty or does not accept the charge at the hearing, then in order to prepare his defense, the rules of natural justice and the police service regulation provides that he must know the nature of the allegations against him. So under those circumstances, you may be required to submit a statement or a report at that time. There are also some divisions which the drafting of the charges is not done by the person who prefers the charge, but you copy the entries and submit your statement, and the admin officer or his designated person does the drafting of the charges. Number 4, you submit the draft charge and other documents to the admin officer for direction on investigation and or approval and signature on the approved charge. So you draft the charges, you are not the person who signs the charge sheet. It is actually the admin officer who has authority to approve those charges. So it goes to the admin officer who can give direction for additional investigations to take place if the content of what you submitted does not substantiate a charge, or if the content of what you submitted should be dealt with at the court of inquiry, or if it should be dealt with in the criminal court. So you should not serve any charge on any person without the admin officer approving the charge. Number 5, the admin officer will cause signed approved charges to be recorded in the defaulters register, which is located at the divisional headquarters, and then canvass a date for the hearing with the divisional officer. And the date of the hearing will be recorded on the approved charge. Number 6, the admin officer will cause the charge to be served on the member. Number 7, and this is a notation that absence of the authority for the charge or wrong section is not fatal unless the defendant was misled. So under normal procedures, Section 64 of the Justice of the Peace Jurisdiction Act provides that you should put the authority under which the authority which creates the charge. But if it is not there, or if you put the wrong section there, as long as the person knows what they are before the court for, then the trial can go on, the hearing can proceed. Number 8, if there's a defect in the summons, it is cured by the voluntary submission without protest of the defendant. So if there's a problem or a mistake on the charge, and the person, the defaulting member, goes to orderly room and does not object to the charges, then it is cured by him surrendering himself to the jurisdiction of the tribunal. Number 9, the hearing should commence no later than 60 days after the breach is detected, and this is found in Headquarters Circular dated May 8, 2017, and the same circular says that the hearing should conclude no later than 1 year after the breach is detected. So the practice where persons have order room charges for years and years without it being tried, that is a thing of the past. And as such, within 1 year, the matter should be concluded. Ensure that you have a copy of the charge sheet, as we will be completing that document next. We are looking at scenario 3 still, the constable who was found not properly shaved, and we will be completing the charge sheet. You have 5 minutes for this activity starting now. I have just under 4 minutes remaining. I have just under 3 minutes remaining. I have just under 2 minutes remaining. You now have under a minute remaining. Thirty seconds. Of course, that sound means that time is up. We will be comparing the entry that you made on the charge sheet with the extract that we have provided. First, we will look at the left-hand side of the charge sheet, which contains the offense for which the accused is being charged. And many times, all that the person does is write the offense, which could be being untidy in the person in this offense section. But the offense is not complete unless it has these particular words, which are that you being a member of the Jamaica Constabulary Force acted contrary to the good order, guidance, the discipline, good order, and guidance of the force, and then you say what the person actually did. So looking at the extract, it reads, first, at the top, being untidy in your person, and then you have that section which is in bold, which is you being a member of the Jamaica Constabulary Force acted contrary to the discipline, good order, and guidance of the force, was untidy in your person, in that you were not properly shaved on Friday, August 7, 2020, about 8 a.m. at Spanish Town Police Station, contrary to number 4, Part 1 of the second schedule of Police Service Regulation 1961. We now look at the right side of the charge sheet, which is the particulars of alleged offense, including date, time, and place. And it normally begins with, that is to say that something happens. So in this particular entry, it states, that is to say that on Friday, August 7, 2020, you reported for station guard duty dressed in uniform at the Spanish Town Police Station. About 8 a.m., you were inspected, and it was observed that you were untidy in your person, in that you were not properly shaved. We now look at the diary entry, which should follow. Follow up diary entry after you have served the charges. So ensure that you have a copy of the diary entry page for the next activity. So having served the charge sheet, you have 5 minutes to complete the follow-up station diary entry. You have 5 minutes for this activity starting now. You know, I have just under 4 minutes remaining. You know, I have just under 3 minutes remaining. You know, I have just under 2 minutes remaining. You now have under a minute remaining. 30 seconds. Of course, that sound means that time is up. We'll now be comparing your diary entry to the extract that we have provided. So the first thing, the name of the person who served the summons, Sergeant Basil Phillipson in this case, served orderly room summons defaulters register number, and on the top of the summons, the charge sheet, it should have the defaulters register number before you serve it. So when it goes to the admin officer and they record it in the defaulters register, it should come back to you with a number which is a unique number. So it is consecutive number starting from the 1st of January, and it starts over on the 31st. It ends on the 31st of December. So the defaulter number is there. Personally served on number, the name of the defaulting member, for being untidy in his person. Service of the summons was done in the presence of and the name of the witness. E is for orderly room at the office of the commanding officer and the date of the orderly room, date and time of the orderly room, and you sign that entry. And you would cross-reference this entry with the original entry where the default was committed, where the entry was made, the original entry. Now that we have completed those 3 scenarios, you may either type your question in the chat section or the comment section, or you may send them to me via email. Thank you.